When we finalize compensation, the CEO said, smiling as he glanced around the table, we'll be cutting Lucia's bonus this year. He paused. Waiting for the reaction, someone chuckled. Another person nodded, like this was a clever cost-saving move. The CFO cleared his throat but said nothing. No one looked at me. I lifted my eyes, cutting it how the CEO shrugged. Fully $500,000 back into runway. You understand, we all need to tighten belts. I hit every target in my contract, I said. My voice was calm, even, including the milestones tied to the IPO prep. He waved a hand. Relax. This isn't about performance, it's just business. It's written into the agreement, I said. He smiled wider. So was a lot of stuff we've outgrown. That did it. The room went still. The head of marketing shifted in his seat. Should we move on? He asked quickly. Yes, the CEO said. Let's not get stuck on details. Details. I wrote most of them. The presentation continued without me. Revenue curves, growth forecasts. Someone joked about what they'd buy after the IPO. I sat there, listening, realizing the decision had already been made before I opened my mouth. As people stood to leave, the CEO leaned closer. Don't take it personally, he said quietly. You'll still be very comfortable. I'm already comfortable, I replied. I just don't like surprises. He laughed. You lawyers, always dramatic? Weeks later, he was still laughing. The IPO presentation was underway when the doors opened. My lawyer stepped inside. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. Excuse me, he said, loud enough to stop the slide deck. Before this continues, I have a question. The CEO frowned. Who authorized this? I did, I said. My lawyer held up a folder. You're representing to investors that you own the company outright. The CEO scoffed. That's not what this is about. So, my lawyer continued, you are selling a company you do not actually own. The room erupted into whispers. The CEO walked toward me, his smile gone now. Lucia, he said under his breath. This is unnecessary. You made it necessary, I replied. His voice dropped even lower. I was just joking about that bonus. I met his eyes. No, I said. You were checking if I'd let you. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Her Revenge. Names, companies, and events are imagined, but the dynamics are real. This story explores what happens when professional respect is tested, when credit is quietly reassigned, and when a woman decides not to laugh along with a joke meant to erase her. That was not the first time he had tried to rewrite my place in the company. It was just the first time he did it out loud. I didn't disappear all at once. It happened in pieces. Lucia, can you stay after the CEO said one night, back when the office still felt small enough to matter? For what I asked, paperwork, he said, already grabbing his jacket. You're better at that stuff. That was how it started. He went to dinners. I stayed with documents. In the early days, it was just the two of us and a folding table. He talked. I listened, then translated his ideas into contracts that wouldn't collapse under scrutiny. When investors asked questions, they asked me afterward. Is this enforceable? One of them whispered once, handing me a term sheet. Yes, I said. If they don't change it, they didn't. I drafted employment agreements while he practiced pitches. I built compliance structures while he chased headlines. When the first major investor hesitated, it was because of risk exposure. Give me 20 minutes. I told them. I rewrote 3 clauses and sent them back. The wire cleared the next morning. At meetings, I sat to the side. Lucia handles the legal side, the CEO would say. I handle the vision. People nodded, satisfied. Vision sounded cleaner than responsibility. As the company grew, introductions changed. This is our CEO, someone would say. The founder. I waited for the rest. It stopped coming. At a conference, a journalist shook my hand. So how long have you worked here? Since before there was a name? I said. Oh, she replied, glancing past me. That's nice. Later, I brought it up. You didn't correct her, I said to the CEO. He frowned. About what, my role? He leaned back. You don't like the spotlight. Remember, I like accuracy, I said. He smiled, indulgent. This isn't personal. It's branding. Branding became the explanation for everything. Why my name dropped from slides. Why my bio moved lower on the website. Why new hires didn't know who I was. One afternoon, a junior associate asked, So were you hired before or after the founder? I closed my laptop slowly. before, I said. She laughed, unsure. You're funny. I didn't laugh back. I was learning something then. Silence wasn't being read as professionalism anymore. It was being taken as permission. Do we really need to go through all of this again, he said, tapping the stack of papers with his knuckle. It's just formalities. It's not, I said. It's ownership. He laughed softly. Lucia. We trust each other. I trust paper, I replied. Paper doesn't get ambitious. That conversation happened years earlier, before headlines. Before investors lined up to shake his hand. We were sitting across from each other, the agreement between us, every clause written with intention. You run the company, I said, pointing to one section, operations, hiring, product decisions. That's you. And you, he asked. I protect the foundation, I said. Equity, intellectual property, transfers. Anything that can't be undone later. He skimmed, distracted. You always think 10 steps ahead. I have to, I said. You think one step forward and assume the ground will hold. He smirked and signed. You worry too much. He never read the part that mattered most. Years later, when success settled in, paperwork became an inconvenience to him. Legal will handle it, he said during meetings. I am legal, I reminded him once. You know what I mean, he replied, already checking his phone. When new investors came in, they asked about control. Lucia structured it. He said casually. Very conservative. Like protection was a personality flaw. One afternoon, I asked, have you reviewed the ownership clauses since the last round? He looked up, surprised. Why would I? Because circumstances change. He leaned back. That agreement was for when we were small. Things are different now. The agreement doesn't change just because you feel bigger, I said. He smiled. Patient. You lawyers live in the past. I watched him then. The ease with which he dismissed the document that held everything together. He believed success had replaced structure. He believed momentum made safeguards unnecessary. Later, much later, when he claimed authority that wasn't his to give away. That same agreement waited quietly where I had left it. He had ignored it because it never demanded attention. It would soon demand everything. I noticed the first change when the calendar invite never arrived. I walked into the conference room anyway. The meeting was already in progress. The CEO glanced up, surprised. Oh, he said, I didn't realize you were joining this one. I always do. I replied. He exchanged a look with the CFO. We're keeping this tight. Pre-IPO alignment. I wrote the compliance framework for the IPO, I said. He smiled. Thin? Exactly. We're past that stage. I stayed for the meeting. No one addressed me. Decisions were made in sentences that ended just before my name might have been useful. After that, the access changes came quietly. I opened the shared drive and saw a message where folders used to be. Request permission from owner. I walked to his office. My access to the financial projections is gone. He didn't look up. Temporary. We're cleaning things up. Cleaning what noise, he said. Too many voices slow us down. I'm not noise, I said. He finally met my eyes, not intentionally. The next morning, Slack channels disappeared. Strategy threads went silent. When I asked the head of product why I wasn't looped in, he hesitated. I was told you wanted space, he said. I never said that. He looked relieved. Okay, I'll fix it. He didn't. At lunch, a junior manager stopped me near the elevator. Are you still part of leadership? Yes, I said. Oh, she replied. I wasn't sure. Your name isn't on the org chart anymore. I didn't go back to the CEO after that. I watched instead. New decisions, new titles, new narratives, all without confrontation. At the next all-hands meeting, he spoke about unity. We're streamlining, he said, clear lines, clear ownership. Ownership. The word landed differently now. Afterward, I stood beside him. You're cutting me out. He kept his voice low. Don't make this dramatic. You're still here. I'm not included. He shrugged. Inclusion isn't the same as authority. I understood then. He wasn't pushing me out because I was weak. He was doing it because I was still legally in the way. I didn't find the IPO draft by accident. It was sent to me. Can you do a quick legal sweep? The compliance director asked. Her voice tight. Just boilerplate of what I said. The registration materials, she replied. The early draft. She sounded nervous. like she already knew something was wrong. I opened the file and scrolled risk factors, market overview, growth narrative, then the ownership section, founder and chief executive officer, one name. I scrolled back up, then down again, slower this time. The cap table followed. My equity wasn't gone, but it had been reshaped, reclassified, folded into language that made it look passive, decorative. I walked straight to the CEO's office. "You sent this out?" I said, holding up my tablet. He barely glanced at it. "Yes, you're listed as the sole owner." He leaned back. "For clarity, that's not clarity," I said. "That's false." He sighed. "Lucia, this is how IPO narratives work. Investors want simplicity. They want accuracy." I said, "They want confidence," he replied. And one voice. "My name isn't even mentioned. You're covered," he said. "Your equity is still there, not in a way that survives this," I said. He stood up then, walked closer. "You're overreacting. If this goes public like this," I said, "I lose standing." He lowered his voice. "You'll still get paid. This isn't about being paid." He smiled. Patient again. "It always is." I shook my head. "Once this files, I can't undo it." He shrugged. "Then don't undo it." I understood in that moment. The bonus cut hadn't been about savings. It had been a signal. This document was the follow-through. He wasn't pushing me aside anymore. He was sealing the door. "Everyone thinks the first move is to sue," my lawyer said, closing the folder without looking at me. "That's usually the worst one." His name was Daniel Cross. I had known him longer than the company. He didn't waste words. "If I file now," I said, "he'll settle." "Yes," Daniel replied, quietly, "with a non-disclosure agreement. He'll pay you enough to disappear and tell everyone it was a misunderstanding, and the IPO, it goes forward," he said. With his version of history, I leaned back. "So I lose twice." "You lose your leverage," Daniel corrected. "And your voice?" I stared at the agreement on the table between us. "He's lying in the filing." "Not yet," Daniel said. "He's preparing to." "What's the difference timing?" he said. "If you challenge him before he goes public, it's a private dispute. If he misrepresents ownership to investors, it becomes a market problem." I was quiet for a moment. "That puts everyone at risk." Daniel nodded. "Which is why it works." "I don't want to burn the company down," I said. "You don't have to," he replied. "You just have to let him speak." I shook my head. "He'll say I'm emotional, that I'm angry about the bonus." "He already is," Daniel said. "That's his story no matter what you do." "And if I wait, then he locks himself in," Daniel said. "Once he stands in front of underwriters and claims sole ownership, the process freezes. Not because of you, because no bank touches uncertainty." I looked up. "You're saying the truth only matters once there are witnesses." Daniel met my eyes. "I'm saying justice without exposure is just paperwork." I exhaled slowly. "So we wait." "Yes," he said. "And when the moment comes, we don't argue. We ask one question." I nodded. The plan wasn't loud. It wasn't satisfying yet, but it was clean. And it required patience. He caught me outside the boardroom before I could leave. "Lucia," he said, lowering his voice. "We should talk. I'm listening," I replied. He smiled like this was a favor. "I know things feel tense, but you're still going to be very rich. That's not what this is about," I said. He sighed. The sound practiced. "You're letting pride get in the way of a great outcome. This is ego, not ownership." I read the filings. I said, "That's ownership." He leaned closer. "Come on, you have equity. You'll cash out. You'll never have to work again if you don't want to." "I already work because I want to." I said, "That's not the point." He shook his head, almost kindly. "You're taking this personally. That bonus thing set you off." "It didn't set me off," I said. "It showed me where I stood." "You stood where you always have," he said. "Behind the scenes, where you're comfortable." I held his gaze. "You decided that for me." His smile thinned. "I decided what was best for the company, and for you," I said. He didn't deny it. "This is how it works," he said instead. "You push back now, people will see you as difficult, emotional. That reputation sticks. So does fraud," I said. His expression hardened. "Careful. Is that a threat?" I asked. He softened immediately. "No. Advice. I don't want you to hurt yourself. I'm not the one in danger," I said. He laughed quietly. "Lucia, You don't have the stomach for a public fight. You never did. I realized then what he believed. He thought my restraint was fear. He thought my silence meant consent. He thought I would choose comfort over truth, because that was what he would do. He stepped back, satisfied. Think about it, he said. You can walk away clean. I watched him leave, already rehearsing his version of events. I didn't follow. I didn't argue. I didn't warn him. He thought quiet meant finished. It meant prepared. The CEO was mid-sentence when Daniel stood up. Before you go any further, Daniel said, voice steady. We need to address ownership. The CEO smiled toward the audience. We'll take questions at the end. This is not a question, Daniel replied. It's a clarification. A murmur moved through the room. One of the underwriters leaned toward the other, whispering. The CEO's smile tightened. Who authorized this? The CEO asked. I did, I said from my seat. Daniel placed the folder on the table. You're presenting yourself as the sole owner of the company, the CEO scoffed. That's a misunderstanding. Daniel opened the folder. This is the founder's agreement, signed by both parties. It outlines control of operations and ownership safeguards. One of the bankers raised a hand. Is this accurate? Yes, Daniel said. And it grants Lucia Bennett authority over any transfer of ownership. The CEO shook his head. That agreement is outdated. Daniel didn't argue. It was never terminated. Silence fell heavier this time. An underwriter spoke up. Are you saying there's an unresolved ownership issue? Daniel nodded. Yes. The CEO turned to me, his voice dropping. Lucia, this isn't necessary. I stood. It is. He stepped closer. You're doing this over a bonus. I'm doing this over the truth, I said. One of the bankers cleared his throat. We need to pause. The CEO spun back. Pause what? The offering, the banker said, until this is clarified. Another voice joined in. We can't proceed with uncertainty. The CEO's face drained of color. He looked at Daniel. You're blowing this out of proportion. Daniel closed the folder. Markets don't tolerate ambiguity. The CEO turned back to me, his voice barely audible. I was just joking about that bonus. I didn't respond. The underwriters were already standing, phones out, conversations starting without him. The presentation screen behind us still glowed, frozen on his name alone. For the first time since I had known him, the room was no longer listening. He followed me into the side corridor before the underwriters finished their calls. Lucia, he said, breath tight. We can still fix this. Fix what? I replied. This, he said, gesturing vaguely toward the room. The confusion. You didn't have to make it public. You made it public. I said. You filed it. He lowered his voice. I was just joking about that bonus. I looked at him. You weren't joking. You were measuring. His jaw clenched. You're turning a pause into a scandal. It's already paused, I said. Because of what you claimed. It's not cancelled, he snapped. The offering is frozen. Temporarily, frozen is enough, I said. A banker stepped out, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't look at us. Another followed, then another. Conversations were happening without the CEO in them. You're damaging your own reputation, he said. People are already asking why you waited. They're asking why you lied, I replied. He scoffed. They'll see this as a personal dispute. They'll see documents, I said. A board member approached, hesitant. We need to talk, she said to him. Privately, he nodded stiffly, then turned back to me. You didn't think about the consequences. I did, I said. I just accepted them. He searched my face. You could have walked away rich. I could have walked away erased, I said. His voice dropped, bitter now. No one likes the person who stops the music. I didn't stop it, I said. I showed them who was playing. Later that night, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't answer. Some were sympathetic, some weren't. One read, You didn't have to do it like this. I set the phone down. The quiet felt heavier than the room ever had. The pause had done its work. What came next would not be loud, but it would last. 3 months later, the board chair called me. He's stepping down, she said. Effective immediately. No speeches, no headlines. Just a line in a filing that said the company was pursuing new leadership. The CEO didn't call me. He didn't apologize. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. When we met to finalize my exit, the general counsel slid a document across the table. Your name will be restored, he said. Founder. as of the original date. I read it once, then again. And the record, I asked. It will reflect joint ownership as it always should have, he said. No carve-outs, no footnotes. The former CEO's attorney cleared his throat. We're prepared to offer additional consideration to resolve this quickly. I shook my head. I'm not here for a premium. He frowned. Then what do you want? I tapped the page. Accuracy. The room went quiet. Then the board chair nodded. Done. Outside. Daniel waited. You could have pushed harder, he said. I pushed far enough, I replied. News traveled the way it always does, sideways, and softened. Some people stopped returning my calls. Others started. A few sent messages that tried to split the difference. You were right, but it didn't have to be like that. I didn't answer those. A week later, a junior associate from years back called me. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. They corrected the training materials. Your name is on them now. Good. I said. Keep it there. I didn't keep the office. I didn't keep the title. I kept the truth, in writing, where it couldn't be laughed away. Here's the lesson I learned, and the one I'm willing to stand by. Real power isn't loud, and it isn't generous. It lasts. It sits quietly in documents, in records, and in names that remain when the room moves on. If telling the truth costs comfort but secures ownership, that is not a loss. It is a fair trade.